Hey, hi, how are you? My name is Felt. Welcome back to some Deadlock. Today we're going to be talking about some advanced laning tips. These are things that, after you kind of have a mastery of the core concept of lane, you're not losing lane every single time, but you've realized that you're not losing lane, but your games aren't going as well as you'd hope, and you have to really fight your way to victory through the mid game. This is the type of video for you. This is going to talk about how to make your lane phase go even better than it already can go, and how to make it so that you can push your advantages in lane in order to make the game go a lot better for you overall. Let's hop right into things. The biggest difference between mid to low level lobbies and the highest lobbies in the game is how often they're leaving lane. Smart players, when they have pushed their waves and they know that they don't have kill potential on the enemy, will run and grab all the boxes on their side of the map. And if the enemy team is still playing super passive and you still don't really have huge kill potential, you run and steal the boxes on their side of the map. And this is all stuff that happens from the 2-minute mark to the 5-minute mark. This is stuff that is happening well before that bridge buff even spawns. And then, at the 4:30 mark, when that last wave before bridge buff spawns, they're back in lane, they push it aggressively so they don't lose farm, and they come over here to the side, and they immediately start getting ready to go and fight over this bridge buff. They immediately get there. They are ready to fight. They're ready to have someone on their team have this buff so that they have an advantage. You'd be shocked at how much of an advantage a bridge buff can give you. The health buff, the survival buff, will make you really hard to kill in because you'll regen so much. Casting makes your spirit abilities do so much more damage. The gun buff isn't actually as good early as it could be. It's usually just a giant chunk of fire rate increase, but more fire rate is still more damage that you're applying to the enemy. And the movement buff, once again, this is something that higher level players will make better use of than the average Joe Schmo in the lower level, but imagine a Viper with a movement buff at 5 minutes into the game. They're sliding everywhere and they are impossible to catch. So let's say that you've already done all that stuff. That's the type of stuff you're used to doing. Your game plan is like set in stone from 0 minutes up till about 6 minutes. You go to lane, you run boxes between waves starting at the 2-minute mark, you make sure that you're fighting over the bridge buff at the 5-minute mark, and you're like, but I need more help, I'm still not always winning stuff. Did you know that you can leave to go and fight whenever you want? Did you know that sitting in lane is not required of you, and you can in fact rotate around the map whenever you want to? Some people get a little lost in the idea of, well, it's my land and I need to defend it. And yes, that's very true. But if you tell your teammate that you're going to go leave and go gank another lane, go do it. Now, when would you want to do that, though? Well, a great example for a lot of characters is when they hit their power spikes. For a character like Pocket, it'd probably be getting Cold Front and then potentially Mystic Vulnerability, or getting Cold Front and then like opening rounds online, so that you have 2 items that really help you push tempo and try and get a kill. For other characters, it is usually getting their ultimate online. A hero like Silver, the second they get their ult online, is going, okay, I want to fight every opportunity I can. The ult only has a 40-second cooldown by base, right? As you can see on the screen here, it only has 40-second cooldown by base, but it lasts 15 seconds, so it's really only like a 25-second cooldown because it goes on cooldown after it activates, making this an ability that is up all the time almost, and you're always transforming into a bigger, stronger form of yourself. That bigger, stronger form of yourself is great for rotating out of your lane. If you have already pushed your lane aggressively, and while you might not have Guardian yet, you have the enemy team cowering from you and your lane mate, leave. If you're playing in the side lane over here and you've pushed them under Guardian constantly, you're always stealing their boxes, you're always stealing their little side camp, go gank mid lane. Go fight in blue. Push that advantage that you have elsewhere on the map. That is something that separates lower level players from higher level players a lot, is realizing, I'm strong here, they're not, I should go help another lane. And it can also be in the opposite direction of, my lane is going really poorly, but my lane mate is really good at clearing wave. I'm going to go do other things. I'm going to go look for boxes around the map. I'm going to go find T2 camps to go do around the map. And then after you get a slight lead, or at least a good item or two from that, you leave and you go gank a lane, because that could be what your character is better at. And it's not just me, and it's not just high-level players that tell you to leave lane. The game tells you to leave lane, even during the laning phase. The game tells you to go gank and get kills. Want to know how I know? Characters like Mo and Krill. Combo gives you bonus max health per kill whenever you use combo on someone. You're not gonna always get kills with this in lane. The enemy team usually sees you coming in your lane, so you know what you can do? You can rotate out of your lane. You can go rotate from a side lane to mid lane, or from mid lane to a side lane, and surprise someone by jumping them with a combo out of nowhere. The same general idea can be said for Vindicta. Vindicta doesn't always want to truly rotate all the way over to a lane, but they like to get about halfway between lanes, jump up with their flight ability, and then use Assassinate to try and pick off easy kills in the early to mid game to start stacking up that weapon damage percent that they can get from their ultimate ability. They're not going to full rotate and do a full gank like Mo and Krill does, but they might partly rotate over to one of the tall buildings nearby and try and pick off an easy kill because someone is well below the 50% mark, and so you're getting max bonus damage on your Assassinate. Grey Talon's another example is very similar to Vindicta, where they don't want to full rotate to a lane to start a fight, but they'll absolutely throw out Guided Owl and have it fly around the map to try and go and pick off easy kills on people so that they can start stacking their spirit damage on their ultimate. They're a great example of a character like Vindicta that doesn't full rotate, but wants to have impact on other lanes. There's also people like Calico, who are a bit more similar to Mo and Krill, where they want to physically be in the lane, because once they get 2 points of Leaping Slash, if they get a kill after hitting their 2, they're going to get 200 bonus souls, which on top of all the souls they're getting from killing someone, it just gives you even more. It makes them feel better. They're already a roamer who wants to go and kill people off on the side lanes. This just gives you more of a reason to start doing that once you have, say, Cold Front and Stalker going, because then you can do big bursts of damage and surprise people. Last example we got is Drifter. Drifter loves roaming around and going and get kills on people who are stuck and isolated, either on side lanes or in the mid lane or on a camp or something. They're another great example of someone who wants to just go around and get kills, someone who wants to be active early. And the earlier you get active on any of these characters that I've mentioned, the more surprised the enemy team will be, and the higher odds you'll have of actually confirming some kills. Now, not every character does these exact things. Not every character wants to leave lanes. Some characters want to sit in the lanes, but learning when to leave and when to stay is a big part of what makes your laning phase go from I'm winning lane and things are going well to I'm winning lane and I'm making my teammates win lane too. My next tip for how to win lane, get better at laning, and overall contribute more to your overall team winning is learn how to invade. Now, invading can be as simple as running boxes on the enemy's side of the map. For example, if you're on green and this is your base on this half of the map, you'll be fighting a lane over there. You'll be trying to invade the little camp that spawns right here on the map, right next to the Guardian. But if they're doing a good job at securing that because they have Mina or something similar, you can come over here and just steal their box farm, because these boxes that are between the two lanes will often go uncontested for the early game, especially in lower ranks. In higher ranks, these are more likely to have already been stolen, but it's always worth checking. There's all these boxes on the rooftops, and there's even more boxes back here on these rooftops. Another 4 boxes over here, another 3 over there, and another golden statue over there. And then if you're going to try and get all of that and then try and get out scot-free, you can grab these, and then you can drop down and jump into this, and then steal these boxes all through here. All of this stuff together is a pretty quick route that'll allow you to then come back to your half of the map and potentially hit all of your boxes on your part of the map. And the same can be said for all other map locations. There's tons of different routes to run throughout the map that'll allow you to either secure your own farm or steal other people's farms, but trying to steal the other people's boxes before you go back to secure your own is generally better. If the enemy team really knows what they're doing, you might run into them while you're trying to steal their boxes. Boxes aren't worth fighting and dying over. Do your burst on them to try and dissuade them from fighting you, and then use your escapes to get out. This is why when you're doing all this stuff, you should probably be careful and try and make sure you keep at least 1 or 2 stamina while you're running between all these different boxes and golden statue spawns. Obviously, boxes are not the only thing you can steal, though. Sinner Sacrifice, as if you've been watching any of my gameplay videos lately, you've seen me harp on it in the post-commentary. These are possibly the best thing to steal. The 4 gold statue buffs you get from it are something that the enemy team will never get back. Even if they immediately kill you and get all the unsecured souls back from you stealing the centers, they will never get those gold statue buffs back. This one in particular is a pretty good one to steal because it's so open. There are so many places to run. You can run down there. You can try and jump up here to hop onto the pad. You can try and jump through that window to escape, or you can just run through the middle of the map and then try and use the bridge to escape. That's also why on the other side, this one is good to invade. And because of how the map is mirrored, if you are laning on this side of the map and you want to invade over here, you can also see that this is good invasion, and this is good for invasion. All of these are very wide open things on the map, and are pretty good things for you to try and invade and steal, because like I said, Those golden statue buffs are never going to go back to the other team. Those are permanent. Those are things that you keep forever. Now, there are other Cinder Sacrifices on the map, like they're the ones that are inside the buildings on the far sides, like on this side of the map, inside this little building here, there is a Cinder Sacrifice machine to be done, and the same is said for the other side of the map. They have a building over there that has the Cinder Sacrifice hiding inside of it. Now, there's also the Double Cinners machines, which is the best thing to invade and also the best thing for you to secure. However, as you can see, you have to drop down inside this building, and it gets quite dangerous in here if you're not ready. I'd recommend doing this as a character like Doorman, who can just door his way out to escape. Moen Krell, a character who has lots of escape speed with Burrow and has lots of self-heal. Potentially Pocket, because if you can get out of the top here, you can throw out your cloak, hop into your suitcase to hide for a second, and then TP to your cloak to get on out of there. But any number of safer characters are better to invade these with, or a character potentially like Venator, because Venator can set up traps here to where if anyone drops down, they'll get caught by that trap. They can set up a trap right here on the steps so that if anyone's walking up, they get caught in that trap. And also they have Gut Shot, which will stun people into walls when you shoot them with it. And then you can use that time to jump out of the roof, jump over here, and then potentially take a vent to get on out. Now, the same can be said for lots of other characters who have setups and stuns and things like that. Apollo, for example, is pretty good at it as well, because Apollo can use their riposte to safely disengage from most situations, and then use disengaging sigil to get even more distance. But in general, they're a really, really good thing to invade, because it's two centers right next to each other that the enemy team, once again, will never get those golden statue buffs back from, but it is quite dangerous. Now, obviously, there's more to invade than just Sinner's machines, but they are the number one thing that I always think of when I think of invading. There's also tons of camps that are worth invading. This camp right here is great to invade because it's done really quickly and is not on your half of the map. This camp right here is also pretty good to invade because you can take both of the medium-sized guys and leave the big guy for later when you either have Cult of Sacrifice, or just leave it so that the enemy team would have to kill the big guy to reset this camp. This small camp here is a pretty good contender as well because it is on the way to the double Cinder Sacrifice machine, but is not near as dangerous as getting up there because you can grab the camp and then immediately go to cross the bridges to get back across. This camp right next door is also a pretty good contender because, once again, it is right next to an open way back across the map to your side so that you can get back to safety and your guardians and walkers. By comparison, this camp right next door is a lot harder for you to steal because you have to walk inside it, steal it, and then walk out to then try and either go through this little tunnel here or right next to the enemy guardian through here, so it's a little harder to steal, but it is worth looking into because it's so close to the midpoint of the map. This small camp is another one that's really quick and easy to steal, and it's right next to the midpoint, right next to a Cinder Sacrifice machine. This is a little harder to steal, though, and there's a similar one on the opposite side of the map, inside of another similar building. The problem with this is that because it's so tight and enclosed, you'll just have a problem securing it and then getting out without someone jumping in inside the little building with you and just turning it into probably a bit of a burger box. As we go further to the other side of the map, the camps get a little harder to invade and go after. This camp can be pretty difficult to invade because, kind of similar to that Cinder Sacrifice machine, you have to walk inside to really start invading it, but it is right next to a bridge and as a result is a little easier to get back across the bridge and get to safety. And the same can be said for the little camp on the roof here right next door. It's a little easier than some of the other ones, but it is still a bit more dangerous because while you can get away from here and immediately get to the bridges to get back across, it's a little harder because of, the giant building in your way. If you've been really aggro and really pushing your lanes aggressively on this side of the map, you'll see that there's this little church camp here that you can invade. Lots of boxes, a statue or two, plus a camp. This is another liable option, but it's a bit more dangerous, just like the other ones. And if you'll notice, each side of the map has similar things like that. This side of the map has lots of little open camps that are easier to invade, and this side of the map has camps that are possible to invade, but a little more difficult to get to. The map's imbalanced in a symmetrical way, to where this half of the map that's harder to invade is the same as this half of the map down here. Now, as you get further and further back behind enemy lines, you'll see the big camps over here, and the smaller camps over here. These are camps that you really only want to be invading if you have Rejuve up. But if you have Rejuve up, it's a pretty good place to invade because you have the safety of Rejuve behind you, and your team will also probably be pushing down stuff on the enemy side of the map, keeping them occupied if you're not with them at the time. Invading is pretty straightforward conceptually, but learning when you can go do it, what camps to hit, and what camps to hit when, as well as when to go after Sinners and not go after Sinners, is a bit more complicated, And that is something that would take hours of playing to learn how to do, much less a 20-minute YouTube video. Just understand what some of the better camps are to invade, some of the better things to invade, like Sitter Sacrifice machines, and know that playing carefully around your invasions is the most important thing. So what's the next general step when it comes to improving your laning so that it doesn't just go, oh, I won lane, now what do I do? It's I win lane and I am able to do other stuff as well. Well, this is more literal how to actually win your lane. You have to know your matchups. Now, what do I mean? For example, let's talk about Mina. Now, this game currently has a roster of 38 characters at the time of recording this video. So does that mean I have all 37 one-to-one matchups memorized on Mina? No, I do not have every single one-to-one matchup memorized on Mina, but I do know most of them, and I do understand how Mina plays into most heroes of the game at this point. Mina's my most played character, by a pretty long shot, to be honest. And so as a result, I know characters that I always have to look out for. Bebop is one that lately has been a real hassle because they will constantly be grabbing you out of position with a grapple arm and trying to shove you around with an exploding uppercut. And since the nerf to Sanguine Retreat, giving you a little less range to get away, and also just generally giving you less invulnerability, as a result of that, I have to be a lot more careful when I'm playing into a lane with Bebop. What else do I have to worry about? Well, Mina has one of the lowest health pools in the game. Mina by default only has 670 health. So who else am I looking out for when I'm playing as Mina? Well, I'm looking out for characters like Lash, who will try and use Ground Strike from rooftops to hit me for 200 damage early game. I'm looking out for characters like Viper, because Viper's Lethal Venom early game goes all the way up to 140 damage, which is a lot for a character who only has 700 max health at the very beginning. I'm looking out for Warden, because Warden's Alchemical Flask can make it so that I can't use my stamina. I only have 2 by default, so I need to be very careful of not getting my stamina sucked away and then stuck in Binding Word. I do this to Minas a lot when I play Warden. They have a really bad time. I also know that when I'm laning against 7, I look out for Static Charge because I can immune it by using my Sanguine Bats at just the right time right before it goes off to not even get stunned by it. In case you haven't picked up, I do know a lot of different matchups and things to look out for when you're fighting against different heroes. Mina has really good matchups into most of the roster right now because of the strength of Sanguine Retreat, but having a low HP pool really counteracts a lot of that. So how do you play around that? Well, you learn to play safely. You learn to play around, for example, with Mina, you learn to play around Rake and use that to heal you off of waves and off of camps. You also typically learn how to build around different ideas. For example, this build that I'm taking at the moment is using extra health to just make you more survivable early game. 210 bonus health on a character who only has 600 is almost a 33% increase in your total health pool for buying one item. Combine that with stuff like Reactive Barrier to when you get stunned or pulled out of position, giving you a barrier that's like half the size of your health pool, you become a lot tankier in a lane and you become a lot harder to deal with. Now, Mina is a super specific example, but a lot of how you play Mina kind of applies to other similar characters. What do I mean by other similar characters? Well, Mina has an ability that they like to consistently shoot people to try and proc it, right? There's other people in this game who do that. Mirage and Mina play quite similarly in lane in terms of how they try and poke people, just that Mirage, their survivability and escapes come from using Fire Scarabs and Dust Devil. Infernus is another character who plays generally similar, but they have a lot more safety because their ultimate is a giant AoE stun and their dash is a super long range escape. But they also have a passive ability that they like to proc on people that does damage over time and causes them to feel harassed and pushed back. All 3 of these characters play the laning phase generally similar of they try and proc whatever passive ability they have on the enemy team to try and do damage and poke them out while playing safe because they don't want to be falling behind and dying early because their mid to late game is incredibly strong and will really help the team in the long run. However, let's compare that to someone like Lash. Lash is someone who likes to just be spamming Ground Strike Flog on people and poking them out and going in and hitting them in the face. And when their ult comes up, they like to throw people out of position and then use Ground Strike and Flog, hit them in the face, and finish them off usually. This is nowhere near the same as how Mina plays. Lash is trying to go in, get in their face, be disruptive, and uses their self-healing in the moment to try and be more disruptive. That's very similar to how someone like Pocket plays, as a matter of fact. Pocket runs in with Flying Cloak and Enchanter Satchel, does a big burst of damage, and then TPs on out, similar to the way that a Lash might grapple their way out of a fight. This is a different concept of how you play the character, and you have to go, okay, well, these characters are doing this and trying to harass people and cause problems in the same way that Yamato does, because Yamato tries to put Power Slash, Flying Slash, Crimson Slash, all of the slashes onto people to do general poke damage and then get out of there before they die. All these characters play similar ways, but that means as a result, they have similar matchups. What do all these characters look for? Well, they look out for characters like Billy, who disrupt what they're trying to do. Bash down, knocking you away. Rising Ram, knocking you up. Chain Gang, pulling you out of position. Characters like Abrams, who will try and use shoulder charge to shove you out of where you want to be after you land and make it harder for you to escape. Characters like Venator, who will try and gut shot you into a wall to stun you and Hexline snap trap you in place so that you can't leave. These are things to watch out for on these more aggressive in-your-face harassers, and those are the types of matchups you have to think about. Every character in the game has good and bad matchups to play into. This is something that you need to keep in mind when you're laning. The better you are at playing around your good and bad matchups, the better you'll do in lane. And these are things that, obviously, there are general ideas to follow behind, and obviously lots of characters have quote-unquote bad matchups into certain characters. Like, I can't think of a single person in this roster who likes being grabbed with grapple arm and pulled out of position, except maybe a Dynamo with ultimate up, or an Abrams with double shoulder charge, but using Echo Shard. Most of the roster is pretty unhappy to be yanked out of position like that. So most people see Bebop and go, okay, I need to play safer. That's part of learning your matchups, just understanding what characters are the problems regardless of anything else, regardless of what character you're playing, knowing what people do and knowing how to play into them. It gets easier if you focus on how your characters and your core, probably 5 to 6 people you like to play into the rest of the roster, but just learning how the roster plays in general will really help you with this. Learning how to counterplay how these people play is really important and will help you win your lane more often. This pile of items in front of you is items that you will buy for lane that are not always going to go further, and these are always things that you should get. This section of the video is about actually spending your souls on lane items being okay. I see lots of people, when they go for their builds, they don't bother to buy anything amongst these items. They're almost always going to immediately go straight into their build and skip out on anything else, because the idea is that you will always need the items in your build and you don't always need these. You'll have to sell them later and you only get half value back. Yes, you'll get half value back on the item. But being able to do 45 bonus headshot damage in lane through the early game when people have health bars as low as Mina's of starting at 670 is a pretty big deal. Being able to regen 3 extra HP per second in combat and 4 total outside of combat is a really big deal. Having your parry up more frequently is good. Being able to do more damage against minions to push them is good. Being able to get 50 flat HP healed if you shoot a hero and have a little bit of weapon damage is good. All of these items are good. There's a reason they're in the game. They're cheap, they're easy to use, and they're really fast to buy so that you can use them in the laning phase to survive the laning phase. Laning phase is a lot more important than a lot of people give it credit for. Yes, certain hyper carries can just not care about the laning phase, and as long as they get enough money and the game doesn't end too fast, they will always come back and are able to end the game. But if you end the game faster by buying these cheap, efficient items to help push them out of lane faster so they can't fight back against you ever, you're probably going to win the game. A lot of these TU2s here have the exact same conversation. Battle Vest, it only gives you bullet resist and out of combat regen, or damage and fire rate when you're above a certain health point. Well, what if you're not above that health point? The item is still a good green item that gives you bullet resist. What's not to like? Same argument exists for Enchanter's Emblem of, it's the exact same thing, but for spirit stuff. It gives you spirit power and cooldown when you're above a certain health point. Both of these items are crazy good and bought in most builds as a cheap early option, either to counteract what the enemy team is doing, or it's just so good for your character it's hard to pass up. Like a lot of pocket builds include Enchanter's Emblem right now. A lot of Venator builds include Battle Vest right now, as do most Billy builds that I've seen. That also applies to items like Healbane, where the item's just good. It gives spirit power and anti-heal. It's great. Active Reload is an item that sees play on Haze all the time because it's an activated ability that gives you a huge buff of stats, and you also get bonus max ammo out of it. All of these items are good and do stuff. Even items like Spirit Sap, which don't really have a ton to them. They reduce spirit power by 30 and 9% spirit resist, which isn't a massive amount of stuff, but early game, this takes away almost the entire amount of spirit power most characters can buy if they're not hard committing to spirit power. This will turn them from having 15 to 20 spirit power all the way down to 0. Suppressor does a very similar thing, especially for characters like Seven who can bounce their spirit damage everywhere. 28% fire rate down means that Amina is shooting at you 28% slower, which means that they will proc Love Bites much slower, and you'll probably be able to hide around corners and not actually get it procced on you. This doesn't upgrade into anything either. A lot of these items don't upgrade into anything, and they're still really good because they are cheap, efficient things that get you going in the early game that make it hard for the enemy team to fight back against you. And now we're coming up on our final tip, and that is farm, then get kills, then do the Guardian. Your laning phase should very much be focused around farming to get your power spikes, using those power spikes to focus down the enemy team and get kills, and then using those kills to get down the enemy Guardians. The final goal of most laning phases and most MOBAs is to take down the defending towers so that you can open up the map and do more of what you want. Be that invading, be that hunting for more kills, or be that going for the neutral objectives like mid-boss or like the urn. It is much harder to do all these neutral objectives if the enemy team still has their Guardians and stuff up. Treating laning phase like a tiny bit of a checklist, and I do mean a tiny bit, is not a bad thing. Going, okay, well, I need to farm up in lane and try and make sure I get the items that I need so that I can start pushing for kills. Don't push for kills just for kills, though. Push for those kills so that you can turn those kills into pressure on Guardians. Making Guardians fall early, especially the one in mid lane, is really, really good because it opens up so much of the map for you to play around. If, for example, you know that you're on the side of the map that is going to have an urn delivered on you soon, you should really start pushing down the Guardian, start trying to force a kill. Buy those cheap, good items that help you push down towers really fast, and try and get the enemy team out of there so you can secure an urn for your team. Laning phase isn't important just because it gets you the items that you need, and it makes it so that you can go and fight in the rest of the game. Laning phase sets you up for the rest of the game. The better you do in your lane, or the better you do at losing your lane gracefully, the better you are set up for the rest of the game. Being able to keep this Guardian until the end of the game, kind of cool, kind of a flex, but really not that important. Whether or not you lost it at the 2-minute mark because you weren't spending your money on buying items that helped you survive lane is a little more important. That's all we got for more tips about learning to lane more efficiently and learning to lane better so that your laning phase isn't just a, aha, we won, why is my team lost? It's more of a, we won, we pushed our advantage, and we helped our team win. Either way, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and all that stuff. All the support the channel gets is very much appreciated. But for now, I'm going to get out of here. Thanks for watching. Y'all are cool, and I appreciate all of you, and I hope to catch you all in the next one.